The champagne cork popped on the live stream, echoing like a gunshot in the silence of my empty car. On the screen, my mother raised a crystal flute to new beginnings while standing in my living room. I was 5 miles away, shivering in a cemetery parking lot, scraping mud off my heels after burying the only man who ever loved me. They thought they were evicting a fragile, grieving widow for her own good. They didn't realize they had just handed the auditor the keys to the audit. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The rain wasn't the romantic, cinematic kind that dripped gracefully off rose petals. It was a cold Seattle sleet that soaked through my black coat and made the hem of my dress heavy with mud. I stood there, clutching a single white lily, staring at the rectangle of dark earth where they had just lowered Lucas. I looked around the gravesite. There were 20 folding chairs set up on the AstroTurf carpet. 19 of them were empty. I felt a physical ache in my chest, a hollowness that seemed to echo with the wind. I had paid $300 extra for the chair setup. I had sent the invitations 2 weeks ago. I had confirmed the time with my mother, Pamela, 3 separate times. "It's just rain," I whispered to myself, trying to rationalize the empty seats. People don't drive in this weather. But that was a lie. I knew it was a lie. My phone buzzed in my pocket against my hip. I ignored it. I wanted to have this one moment, this final goodbye, without the intrusion of the digital world. I wanted to talk to Lucas. I wanted to tell him that I didn't know how to do the taxes without him, that I didn't know how to silence the smoke detector when it went off at 2 a.m, that I didn't know how to breathe without his steady presence beside me. The phone buzzed again and again. A long, insistent vibration that demanded attention. I wiped the rain from my eyelashes and pulled the device out with a trembling hand. It was the family group chat. My heart leaped for a second, a stupid, pathetic reflex. Maybe they were lost. Maybe they were stuck in traffic on the I-5 and frantically trying to reach me to apologize. I unlocked the screen. There were no apologies. There were no maps or running late texts. There was a photo. It was a selfie of my younger sister, Brittany. She was wearing a white dress, not a wedding dress, but close enough to make you look twice, and pouting at the camera in a bathroom mirror with perfect lighting. The caption underneath read, "Does this lighting make me look pale? Need to look perfect for the big announcement tonight." I stared at the screen, the rain blurring the pixels. Tonight? What was tonight? Then a message from my mother, Pamela, popped up underneath it. "Brittany, honey, you look radiant. Just add a little bronzer." And Zoe, stop ignoring us. We know you see these. Don't be dramatic and bring down the mood today. We need positive energy for Jared. I felt the blood drain from my face. I was standing 6 feet above my husband's corpse, and my mother was telling me not to be dramatic. I typed back, my thumb slipping on the wet screen. "I'm at the funeral. The service just ended. Where are you guys?" The 3 dots of someone typing appeared instantly. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. Finally, a response from my father, Mason. "We decided it was best to give you space, Zoe. You know how emotional you get. We didn't want to make a scene. Plus, Jared has severe allergies to lilies, and we couldn't risk him getting puffy before the live stream. We'll see you at the house. Don't be late." I almost dropped the phone into the mud. Allergies? They missed the funeral of their son-in-law because my sister's fiancé might get a runny nose. I looked back at the grave. The workers were waiting by the backhoe, smoking cigarettes, looking at their watches. They wanted me to leave so they could fill the hole. "I'm sorry, Lucas," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." I turned around and walked away, the squelch of the mud sounding like the heartbeat of a dying animal. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I would scream. And if I started screaming, I didn't think I would ever stop. I made it to my car, a 10-year-old silver sedan that Lucas and I had named the Gray Ghost. It was reliable mostly, but it hated the damp. I threw my purse onto the passenger seat and collapsed behind the wheel, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I wasn't just cold, I was in shock. I put the key in the ignition and turned it. Click. My stomach dropped. I tried again. Click, click, click. No, I pleaded, hitting the steering wheel with the heel of my hand. No, please, not today. Do not do this to me today. I rested my forehead against the cold steering wheel. The starter was dead. Lucas had said it was acting up last month. He had ordered the part. It was sitting on his workbench in the garage right now, still in the cardboard box from the auto parts store. He was supposed to fix it the weekend he died. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to summon the forensic accountant side of my brain, the side that dealt with logic, numbers, and solutions. Problem, car dead. Location, 20 miles from home. Assets, $42 in my checking account until payday on Friday. Option A, call a tow truck. Cost, $150 minimum. Result, overdraft fees. Option B, call a rideshare. Cost, $50. Result, no grocery money for the week. Option C, call family. Cost, dignity. I swallowed the lump of pride in my throat and picked up my phone again. I dialed Brittany. She answered on the second ring, but it was a video call. Her face filled the screen. She was sitting in a salon chair, a foil wrap on her head, holding a glass of champagne. "Hey, sis," she chirped, her voice tinny through the speaker. "Oh my God, you look terrible. Is that mascara running? I told you to get the waterproof kind." "My car died," I said, my voice flat. "I'm at the cemetery. I'm stuck." Brittany took a sip of her champagne, frowning. "Ugh, that car is such a bucket, Zoe. Jared says you need to upgrade. It's embarrassing." "Can someone come get me?" I asked, ignoring the dig. "Dad? Mom? Are they with you?" "They're busy setting up," Brittany said, examining her nails. "And I'm obviously processing. This takes hours, Zoe. I can't just leave with foil on my head." "I'm stranded," I said, a desperate edge creeping into my voice. "In the rain, at a graveyard." Brittany sighed, a loud, exaggerated exhale that fogged up her camera lens for a second. "Okay, look, don't panic. You're always so high-strung. Just call an Uber." "We're really busy getting the vibe right for tonight. It's a big deal for Jared's brand. We can't have negative energy right now." "Negative energy?" I repeated, gripping the phone tight enough to crack the case. "My husband is dead, Brittany." "And that's really sad," she said, her tone dismissive, like I had mentioned a broken nail. "But life goes on, Zoe. Jared says we have to focus on the future. The launch is tonight. Just figure it out, okay? And please, when you get home, come in through the back. We don't want guests seeing you looking like that." She gestured vaguely at my face on the screen, my wet hair, my red eyes, my grief. "Through the back?" I whispered. "Love you. Bye." The screen went black. I sat there for a full minute staring at my reflection in the dark phone screen. I looked like a ghost. Maybe I was. Maybe I had died with Lucas and this was hell. I opened the rideshare app. The surge pricing was active because of the weather. $58. I looked at my bank balance app. $42.15. I had a credit card, but it was maxed out from the funeral costs. I had insisted on the mahogany casket. I had insisted on the good flowers. I had spent every penny of our savings, and then some, because I wanted to honor him. I pressed the button for the ride. It declined. I tried another card. Declined. Tears, hot and humiliating, pricked my eyes. I was a 32-year-old woman with a master's degree in accounting, and I couldn't afford a ride home from my husband's funeral. I scrolled through my contacts. There was no one else. Lucas was my person, my only person. I took a deep breath and opened the overdraft protection settings on my banking app. I authorized a $100 overdraft. The fee would be $35. I booked the ride. "You're going to pay for this," I said to the empty car, though I didn't know who I was talking to yet. "Someone is going to pay for this." The rideshare driver, a guy named Kevin who smelled like vanilla vape juice and stale French fries, didn't say a word the whole ride. I was grateful. I watched the gray suburbs of Seattle roll by, the rain streaking the window like prison bars. We pulled into my driveway 40 minutes later. My heart stopped. There were cars everywhere. My parents' massive SUV was parked on the lawn that Lucas spent every Saturday manicuring. Brittany's yellow convertible was blocking the walkway, and right in the center of the driveway, under the basketball hoop Lucas had installed for the kids we never had, sat a sleek, cherry-red sports car I had never seen before. "Looks like a party," Kevin mumbled as he unlocked the doors. "Something like that," I said, pushing the door open. I walked up the driveway, stepping over the tire tracks in the mud on the lawn. Anger started to heat the cold blood in my veins. They were parking on the grass. They were disrespecting his house. I reached the front door and jammed my key into the lock. It went in halfway and stopped. I frowned, wiggling it. It wouldn't turn. I pulled it out, wiped the rain off it, and tried again. Nothing. It felt wrong. The resistance was different. I looked closely at the lock hardware. The brass was shiny, new, no scratches around the keyhole. They had changed the locks. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my anger. Had I been evicted? Did the bank take the house? No, the mortgage was automatic. I checked the accounts last week. I pounded on the door with my fist. "Open up! Dad! Mom!" I heard muffled music from inside, some upbeat electronic pop song. Footsteps approached the door. The deadbolt slid back. The door swung open. My father, Mason, stood there. He wasn't wearing funeral black. He was wearing a light gray suit with a pink pocket square. He held a tumbler of scotch in one hand. "Zoe," he said, blinking at me as if I were a solicitor selling magazines, "you're dripping on the welcome mat." "Why doesn't my key work?" I demanded, pushing past him into the foyer. "Why are the locks changed?" Mason closed the door calmly behind me. "Lower your voice, Zoe. We have guests." "Guests?" I spun around, water flying from my hair. "It's a funeral day, Dad. Why are the locks changed?" Mason took a sip of his scotch, giving me a look of pity that made my skin crawl. "We did it for you, sweetheart. We were worried about your safety." "My safety?" I asked, bewildered. "From what, the mailman?" "From yourself," he said, his voice dripping with that sick, toxic sweetness. "You've been so unstable since Lucas passed. The grief, it makes people do crazy things. We couldn't risk you losing the keys or letting the wrong people in. Jared thought it was best to secure the property." "Jared?" I choked out the name. "Jared changed the locks on my house?" "Our house," Mason corrected gently. "Well, the family's house. You know you can't afford this place on your own, Zoe, not with Lucas's debts." "Lucas didn't have debts," I said, my voice rising. "We were debt-free except for the mortgage." Mason shook his head sadly. "Oh, honey, that's what he told you. But men, they hide things. Jared looked into it. It's a mess, really. But don't worry, we're here to fix it." He put a hand on my wet shoulder. I flinched away. "We're here to save you," he whispered. I walked into the living room, and my breath hitched in my throat. It wasn't my living room anymore. My furniture, the comfortable beige sectional, the oak coffee table, the bookshelf full of Lucas's sci-fi novels, was gone. In its place were white leather couches that looked like they belonged in a Miami nightclub. There were glass tables with sharp corners. Massive abstract paintings that looked like gold paint splattered on canvas covered the walls where our wedding photos used to be. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's staging," my mother Pamela announced, sweeping into the room. She was holding a glass of white wine and wearing a gold sequin dress that was far too tight. "Don't you love it? It opens up the space so much." "Where is my stuff?" I asked, looking around wildly. "Where are Lucas's books?" "Oh, that old clutter." Pamela waved a hand dismissively. "We packed it up. It's in the garage, or the donation pile, I can't remember. Jared said we needed a clean aesthetic for the launch." "The launch?" I repeated. "You moved my furniture for a party." "Not just a party, Zoe," a deep, smooth voice said from the hallway. I turned to see Jared. He was tall, tan, and wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my car. He walked into the room like he owned it, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. It's an investment, Jared said, walking over to stand next to my mother. He put a hand on her shoulder and she preened. We're launching Prestige Lifestyle tonight. And this house, well, it's the perfect backdrop. This is my house, I said, my hands balling into fists at my sides. Get out, all of you, get out right now. Jared chuckled, a low, condescending sound. Darling, you're hysterical. See, Mason? I told you she would react like this. The grief is making her irrational. I am not irrational, I shouted. I just buried my husband. And we are all very sad about Luke, Jared said, getting his name wrong. But crying about it won't pay the bills, will it? I've seen the numbers, Zoe. You're drowning. You just don't know it yet. I am a forensic accountant, I said through gritted teeth. I know my own finances. You're a data entry clerk, Pamela corrected sharply. Let's be honest, Zoe. You never really used that degree. You settled. We sat down as a family, Jared continued, stepping closer to me. He smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. And we decided to intervene. We're taking over the mortgage. We're taking over the maintenance. We're going to turn this place into an asset instead of a liability. I didn't agree to that, I said. You don't have to, Jared smiled. Your father has power of attorney, remember? From when you had that breakdown in college? My blood ran cold. That was 10 years ago. I revoked that. Did you? Mason asked from the doorway, taking a sip of scotch. I don't recall seeing the paperwork. And given your current state, well, I think a judge would agree you need supervision. I looked from Mason to Pamela to Jared. They weren't looking at me with love. They were looking at me like an obstacle they had already calculated how to remove. So where am I supposed to live? I asked, my voice trembling. If you're taking my house. Oh, sweetie, we wouldn't put you on the street, Pamela cooed. We fixed up the garden suite for you. The garden suite? I stared at her. You mean the tool shed? It's rustic, Jared said. Very cottagecore. It'll be good for you. Simple living. Less stress. You can heal there. And you can watch the house for us, Brittany added, bounding into the room. She was finally dressed, looking like a carbon copy of the Instagram filter she used. Like a caretaker. It's perfect. We moved your boxes already, Mason said, checking his watch. You should probably head back there now. The caterers are arriving in 10 minutes, and frankly, Zoe, you smell like wet dog. I didn't fight them. Not then. I didn't have the energy. The shock was a heavy blanket that smothered my fight-or-flight response, leaving only freeze. I walked out the back door, into the rain. The yard was a mud pit. The caterers had clearly dragged equipment through the grass, leaving deep gouges in the lawn. I walked toward the garden suite. It was a shed. Lucas had built it 3 years ago to store the lawnmower and his woodworking tools. It was 12 by 12. It had a concrete floor. It had electricity, but only enough for a saw and a light bulb. There was no insulation, no bathroom, no kitchen. I opened the door. They had shoved my life into this box. Cardboard boxes were stacked to the ceiling, dangerously leaning. My mattress was on the floor in the corner, sitting directly on the cold concrete. A blue tarp was draped over a pile of what looked like my clothes. It smelled of gasoline, sawdust, and mildew. I stepped inside and closed the door, shutting out the rain but not the cold. I could see my breath in the air. I sat down on the mattress. It was damp. I looked around at the boxes. One was open. It was full of Lucas's framed photos, the ones they had taken off the walls. The glass on one was cracked. A spider scurried across the frame. I pulled my knees to my chest and wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the shivering. It's temporary, I told myself. It's just for tonight. Tomorrow I'll call the police. Tomorrow I'll call a lawyer. But deep down, a voice whispered that tomorrow would be too late. I looked out the single small window of the shed. It faced the driveway. I saw the cherry red sports car again. Jared was walking out to it. He opened the trunk and pulled out a case of champagne. Then he slammed the trunk and leaned against the car, lighting a cigarette. He looked at the house. My house, with a look of pure, unadulterated hunger. And then I noticed where he was parked. He wasn't just in the driveway. He was parked on the specific concrete pad Lucas had poured himself. The pad where Lucas parked his restored vintage motorcycle. Jared flicked his cigarette ash onto the concrete. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, terrifying sound of a cable parting under too much tension. They weren't saving me. They were erasing him. I couldn't sleep. The cold seeped into my bones, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw the empty chairs at the funeral. My phone lit up on the floor beside the mattress. Ding. 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 It was a stream of notifications. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Brittany B is live, the big reveal. I shouldn't have clicked it. I knew I shouldn't have. But my thumb moved of its own accord. The screen brightened, blinding me in the dark shed. The video feed showed my living room. The lights were dimmed, amber and gold. People, strangers mostly, were milling around holding champagne flutes. The camera panned to the center of the room. Brittany and Jared were standing in front of the fireplace. My fireplace. "Hey guys!" Brittany squealed into the microphone, waving at the camera. "Thank you all so much for tuning in. We are so excited to finally share what we've been working on." Jared put his arm around her waist, pulling her close. He looked at the camera with that practiced politician stare. "We've been planning this for months," Jared said. I froze. Months? Lucas had only been dead for 2 weeks. "We realize that life is short," Jared continued, his voice dropping to a somber, serious tone. "We realize that you can't wait to chase your dreams, because you never know when tragedy might strike." He paused for effect. A murmur of sympathy went through the room. "My fiancé's family has been through so much recently," Jared said, looking brave. "But we decided to turn that pain into purpose. We are launching Prestige Lifestyle, a brand for people who want to elevate their existence. And it starts with this house," Brittany cheered. "We are going to be documenting the entire renovation. We're taking this old, dark energy and turning it into something bright and profitable. Renovation. They were going to gut it. And to kick it off," Jared said, raising his glass, "we have a special announcement. Not only are we launching the brand, but as of today, we have officially secured the seed funding to take this global." My parents, Mason and Pamela, stepped into the frame. They were beaming. My father looked like he had won the lottery. My mother was crying happy tears. "To the future!" Mason shouted. "To the future!" the crowd echoed. I watched as my father shook Jared's hand, the hand of the man who was capitalizing on his son-in-law's death. I looked at the timestamp on the video. It was live. Then I looked at the comments scrolling up the side of the screen. User wondered 23. "OMG, congrats! House looks amazing." Sarah Quesquio. "So inspiring how you guys are moving forward." Mikey D. "Wait, isn't that her sister's house? The one whose husband just died?" I watched as that comment was deleted instantly by a moderator. Blocked. They were curating the narrative. They were erasing the truth. I put the phone down, face down on the cold concrete. They thought I was broken. They thought I was a data entry clerk who didn't understand finance. They thought I was just a sad little widow they could stash in a shed while they spent my inheritance. I sat up in the dark. I stopped shivering. I wasn't a data entry clerk. I was a senior compliance officer. I tracked hidden assets for a living. I found money that warlords and drug dealers tried to hide. "You want to focus on the finances?" I whispered to the dark. "Okay, Jared, let's look at the books." I woke up because I couldn't feel my toes. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I curled tighter into the fetal position on the damp mattress, pulling the thin wool blanket up to my chin. My breath bloomed in white puffs in the dim light of the shed. For a split second, that cruel, tiny mercy before memory kicks in, I thought I was in my bed. I thought I could reach out and feel the warmth of Lucas's back. I thought I could smell the coffee he always started at 6:30 in the morning. Then I smelled the mildew. Then I felt the concrete floor beneath the thin foam. The reality of it hit me like a shovel to the gut. Lucas was in the ground. I was in a shed, and the people who were supposed to love me were sleeping in my Egyptian cotton sheets 50 feet away. I sat up, my joints popping with a dry, brittle sound. My bladder was screaming. I stood up, wrapping the blanket around my shoulders like a cape. I walked to the shed door and pushed it open. The rain had stopped, but the sky was the color of a fresh bruise, purple and gray and unforgiving. The main house loomed over me, looking massive and alien. The windows were dark except for the kitchen light. I walked across the wet grass, my bare feet sinking into the mud. I didn't have slippers. I didn't have boots. I had the heels I buried my husband in, and I wasn't ruining them further. I reached the back door, the sliding glass one that led to the kitchen. I tried the handle, locked. Of course. I knocked. Not politely. I rapped my knuckles hard against the glass. I saw movement inside. A shadow detached itself from the kitchen island. It was my mother, Pamela. She was wearing a silk robe that I recognized. It was the one Lucas had bought me for our 5th anniversary. I had never even taken the tags off because I was saving it for a special occasion. She was wearing my anniversary gift while drinking coffee from my favorite mug. She slid the door open just a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Zoe?" she whispered, clutching the robe at her throat. "What are you doing?" "It's 7 in the morning. You'll wake Jared." "I need to use the bathroom," I said, my teeth chattering. "And I'm freezing, Mom. There's no heat in the shed." Pamela sighed, a long, suffering sound that implied my basic biological functions were a personal attack on her morning peace. She undid the chain and slid the door open wide enough for me to squeeze through. The warmth of the kitchen hit me instantly. It smelled of expensive coffee and cinnamon. It smelled like home. I moved toward the hallway, toward the guest bathroom. Ah, Pamela tisked, stepping in front of me. She held up a manicured finger. "Not that one, sweetie." I stopped, blinking. "What?" "Jared is very particular about hygiene," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "And with you coming in from outside, with the mud and everything, we can't have you tracking germs into the main living areas." "He has a sensitive immune system due to the stress of the launch." "The stress of the launch?" I repeated, staring at her. "Mom, I literally just need to pee." "Use the utility bath," she said, pointing toward the laundry room off the garage. "It's better for you anyway. It's rugged. You won't have to worry about messing up the fancy towels. I put a roll of toilet paper in there for you, the single-ply kind so it doesn't clog the septic." "We are on city sewer," I said. "We don't have a septic tank." "Just use the utility bath, Zoe," she snapped, her mask of kindness slipping for a second, "and wash your hands, thoroughly." I walked into the laundry room. The utility bath was a toilet next to the slop sink where Lucas used to wash his paintbrushes. It was freezing in there, too. When I came out, Pamela was waiting for me. She had a list in her hand. "Since you're up," she said, her voice back to that syrupy sweetness, "we could really use your help. The catering staff last night was atrocious. They left a mess on the patio. Jared was going to hire a cleaning crew, but I told him, no, Zoe needs something to do. You know how idle hands are the devil's workshop, especially when you're grieving. Work is healing, sweetie." She shoved the list into my hand. 1. Scrub patio stones, wine stains. 2. Break down cardboard boxes in garage. 3. Sort recycling. 4. Wash Jared's car, mud on tires. "I am not washing his car," I said, looking at the list. "It's just a way to contribute. Pamela said, turning back to her coffee. "Rent isn't free, Zoe, even for family. Consider it. Earning your keep. Oh, and keep it down. The investors are sleeping." I should have thrown the list in her face. I should have marched into the guest room, dragged Jared out of bed by his expensive hair, and kicked them all out. But I didn't, because I had $35 in negative equity, no car, and nowhere to go. And because a small, cold, calculating part of my brain, the part that hunted money launderers for a living, told me to wait, to watch, to gather evidence. So I went outside. The patio was a disaster. Red wine stains looked like crime scene, splatter on the limestone pavers. Half-eaten shrimp tails were scattered in the bushes. Hundreds of empty champagne bottles were piled near the overflowing recycling bins. I found a bucket and a scrub brush in the garage. I started scrubbing the stones. Scrub, scrub, scrub. With every motion, I imagined I was scrubbing away their presence. I moved to the trash cans. There were 10 massive black contractor bags piled up against the side of the house. I had to drag them to the curb for pickup. They were heavy. They clinked with the sound of wasted money. As I grabbed the third bag, the plastic snagged on a rosebush thorn and ripped. Trash spilled out onto the wet grass. I sighed, kneeling down to scoop it up. Coffee grounds, soggy napkins, empty caviar tins, and paper. Lots of shredded paper. I paused. Why was there shredded paper in the catering trash? I looked closer. The shreds weren't the cross-cut kind from a high-security machine. They were long, vertical strips, the kind you get from a cheap home office shredder. I picked up a strip. It was wet and stained with coffee, but the text was legible. $850. I picked up another strip. LD. And another. Old and Platinum Exchange. My heart hammered against my ribs. Gold and Platinum Exchange. That was a pawn shop on 4th Street. I knew it because I had audited a client who used it to fence stolen jewelry 3 years ago. Why was there a pawn shop receipt in the trash from my sister's engagement party? I looked at the bag. It was mostly clear plastic cups and napkins, but at the bottom, there was a clump of these paper strips. I looked at the house. The blinds were drawn. No one was watching. I took a deep breath. I didn't have gloves. I reached into the rip in the bag. The smell of sour wine and rotting shrimp hit me, making my stomach turn. My hand touched something slimy, a half-eaten slider, but I pushed past it. I grabbed the clump of wet paper. "Hey!" I froze. I jerked my hand back, shoving the wet ball of paper into the pocket of my coat. I stood up and spun around. Jared was standing on the patio deck above me. He was wearing a silk kimono and smoking a cigarette. He looked down at me with a mixture of amusement and disgust. "Dumpster diving already, Zoe?" he called down, blowing smoke into the morning air. "I knew things were tight, but I didn't think you'd be eating the leftovers." My face burned. I could feel the wet slime of the trash on my hand. I could feel the soggy paper in my pocket. "A bag ripped," I said, my voice steady. "I was cleaning it up, like Mom asked." "Good girl," Jared said, flicking his ash over the railing. It landed near my feet. "Make sure you get the stains out of the limestone. We have a photographer coming at noon for the before shots of the renovation. I don't want it looking trashy." He turned and walked back inside, sliding the door shut. I looked at the cigarette ash on the ground. I looked at the trash on my hand. I gripped the paper in my pocket. "Smile while you can, Miles," I whispered, using the name I hadn't proven yet but felt in my gut. "Because I'm coming for you." I waited until I was back in the safety of the shed with the door bolted shut before I pulled the wad of paper out of my pocket. It was a sodden mess. I laid the strips out on top of a cardboard box, careful not to tear them further. They were soaked in coffee and what smelled like vinaigrette. I found a roll of clear packing tape in one of Lucas's tool bins. I sat there for an hour, shivering, my breath clouding the air, playing the world's saddest jigsaw puzzle. First, I found the header. Gold and Platinum Exchange, 1244 Market Street. Then the date, Transaction date: the 24th of October, 2025. Yesterday. The day of the funeral. I pieced together the item description. It was fragmented, but the key words were there. Item: men's wrist watch. Brand: Roll. Sub: Serial: 8944X. Rolex Submariner. I stopped breathing. Lucas didn't wear jewelry. He was a practical man. But for his 30th birthday, I had saved for 2 years to buy him a vintage Rolex Submariner. It was his one prized possession. He only wore it on anniversaries. When the paramedics took him away, I had taken the watch off his wrist. I had put it in the safe in the master bedroom closet. Yesterday morning, before the funeral, I had asked Mason where it was. I wanted to hold it during the service. Mason had told me, "Oh, it was looking a bit dull, Zoe. I dropped it off at the jeweler's to get it cleaned for you." I thought it would be a nice surprise. I looked at the receipt. Loan amount: $4,500. Customer name: Mason. The rest of the name was torn off, but the signature was there. A loopy, shaky scrawl I had seen on birthday cards my entire life. My father hadn't taken the watch to be cleaned. He had pawned it. He had stolen my dead husband's watch on the day of his funeral and sold it for $4,500. Why? Mason wasn't poor. He had a pension. He had a paid-off house, or so I thought. Why did he need $4,000 in cash immediately? I looked at the timestamp on the receipt. 10:15 a.m. The funeral started at 11. He was late to the funeral not because of traffic. He was late because he was pawning the watch. A sound tore out of my throat, a guttural, animal noise of pure rage. I grabbed a screwdriver from the workbench and slammed it into the drywall of the shed. Thud. "You thief," I hissed, tears streaming down my face. "You absolute vulture." But rage wouldn't get the watch back. Rage wouldn't evict them. I needed to follow the money. I wiped my face with my sleeve. The rage was still there, burning hot in my chest, but I pushed it down, compressing it into fuel. I turned to the stack of boxes in the corner. "Box 4, I whispered. "Where is box 4? I started tearing through the boxes my mother had haphazardly thrown together. Kitchen utensils mixed with shoes, books bent and shoved into garbage bags. Finally, at the bottom of the stack, I found it. A heavy plastic tote labeled Lucas Office. I ripped the lid off. Inside were his cables, his hard drives, and his laptop, a matte black machine that he built himself. I pulled it out and set it on the workbench. I plugged it in. The battery light blinked orange. I waited 5 agonizing minutes for it to charge enough to boot. I pressed the power button. The fans whirred to life. The screen glowed blue. Enter password. I stared at the blinking cursor. Lucas was a software engineer. He took security seriously, but he was also sentimental. I typed in our anniversary, 060418. Access denied. I typed in the name of our first dog, Buster. Access denied. I typed in the coordinates of the place we got engaged, which I knew he used for the Wi-Fi password. Access denied. Warning. 3 attempts remaining before system lockout. My hands started to shake. If I locked the system, the encryption key would wipe the drive. It was a fail-safe he had installed. I would lose everything. His photos, his emails, his financial records. "Think, Zoe," I whispered, pressing my hands to my temples. "Think like him." He loved sci-fi. He loved obscure quotes. I typed, "Fear is the mind killer." Access denied. 2 attempts remaining. Panic started to rise in my throat, tasting like bile. I was losing him all over again. I was failing him. "Come on, Lucas," I pleaded with the screen. "Help me. What is it? What would you use?" I stared at the hint box. It was just a single character. A question mark. I typed 42 wags. The answer to life, the universe, and everything. Access denied. 1 attempt remaining. I pulled my hands away from the keyboard as if it were red hot. I couldn't do it. I couldn't risk the last try. I put my head down on the cold workbench and sobbed. I was useless. My mother was right. I was just a data clerk who couldn't even guess her own husband's password. I sat there for 20 minutes, listening to the rain start up again on the metal roof of the shed. It sounded like bullets. I looked around the shed, desperate for a distraction from my failure. My eyes landed on the box of books I had shoved aside. Lying on top, spine broken, was a copy of Dune. It was Lucas's favorite book. He had read it once a year since he was 12. The cover was tattered, the pages yellowed. I picked it up. I just wanted to hold something that felt like him. I flipped through the pages, smelling the old paper scent. "I miss you," I whispered. "I don't know how to do this without you." I felt a surge of frustration, at him for dying, at myself for being weak, at the universe for being cruel. I threw the book across the room. It hit the plywood wall with a smack and fluttered to the ground, landing open, pages splayed. As it hit the floor, something white drifted out from between the pages. I stared at it. It wasn't a bookmark. It was a folded piece of graph paper. I crawled across the cold concrete and picked it up. I unfolded it. It was a list, written in Lucas's tiny, precise handwriting. Emergency protocol. 1. Router, Delta 9 X-ray. 2. Safe, 7734. 3. Mainframe. The sleeper must awaken. I stared at the third line. The sleeper must awaken. It was a quote from the movie, not the book. He always argued that the movie quote was catchier. I scrambled back to the laptop. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I typed it in carefully, one key at a time. Capital T, capital S, capital M, capital A. The sleeper must awaken. I hovered my finger over the Enter key. This was it, the last chance. I pressed Enter. The screen went black for a second. Then a green loading bar appeared. System unlocked. Welcome back, Lucas. I let out a breath that sounded like a scream. I slumped against the workbench, laughing and crying at the same time. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you. I didn't waste time looking at photos. I didn't let myself get sentimental over his desktop background, which was a picture of me sleeping on the beach in Maui. I opened the browser. I navigated to a secure portal. Not Google, not Yahoo. Kensington and Wolf Forensic Accounting, Secure Employee Gateway. I typed in my username, Zeed Mitchell Senior Compliance. I typed in my password, my token generated on my phone. Access granted. The interface loaded, rows of data, search tools, and access to the databases that cost $5,000 a month to subscribe to. My family thought I did data entry because I never talked about my work. I couldn't. I signed NDAs that were thicker than a phone book. They thought I made $40,000 a year. In reality, I made base salary plus a percentage of every asset I recovered. Last year, I recovered $12 million for a tech giant. My bonus alone was more than my father's pension. But I lived frugally. We saved. We were planning to retire at 40. Okay, Jared, I said, cracking my knuckles. Let's see who you really are. I opened the LexisNexis search tool. I pulled up the photo of the group chat on my phone, the one I had screenshotted before the funeral. I zoomed in on Jared's contact info that Brittany had shared weeks ago. Phone, 305-555-0199. Area code 305 Miami. I typed the number into the reverse lookup field. Processing. The wheel spun. Result found. Name associated with mobile device. Prepaid burner. Registered owner. NA. A dead end. Smart. But everyone leaves a digital footprint. I went to the social media scraping tool. I uploaded the photo of Jared from the live stream, the one where he was toasting to the future. Facial recognition search. Initiating. This would take a while. The software had to scan mugshot databases, international watch lists, and public profiles. While it ran, I opened a new tab. I went to the county recorder's website, Public Records. I searched for my parents' address, owner, Mason and Pamela Miller. Mortgage history. 1. Original mortgage, 1998. Paid in full, 2018. HELOC, home equity line of credit. Opened October 10th, 2025. October 10th, 2 weeks before Lucas died. Lender, Quick Cash Capital. Amount $300,000. Interest rate 18%. I gasped. 18%? That was loan shark territory. And then I saw the second filing. Notice of default. Filed yesterday. My parents hadn't just taken out a loan. They had missed the very first payment. The facial recognition software pinged. Match found. I clicked the tab. A photo appeared. It wasn't Jared in a tuxedo. It was a younger, thinner man with bleached blonde hair wearing an orange jumpsuit. Name, Miles Polanski. Dobb, 05/12/1988. Charges, wire fraud, grand larceny, Ponzi scheme operator. Status, fugitive, warrant active in Florida. I looked at the mugshot. The nose was different. He had gotten a nose job. But the eyes? The cold, shark-like eyes were exactly the same. Gotcha, I whispered. I was sitting on the cold floor staring at the mugshot of Miles Polanski on my laptop screen when a sharp knock rattled the thin plywood door of the shed. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it under the mattress. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. If that was Jared, Miles, coming to check on me, I was dead. I didn't have a poker face yet. I had a, I know you're a felon face. Zoe, babe, it's Cassie. I let out a breath that was half relief, half exhaustion. Cassie. My best friend since the 3rd grade. The woman who held my hair back when I got food poisoning at prom. The woman who was supposed to be my maid of honor if we ever renewed our vows. I unbolted the door. Cassie stood there in a beige trench coat, holding a Tupperware container and looking at the shed with wide, horrified eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered, stepping inside and immediately pulling her coat tighter. "Zoe, it's like a kennel." "It's temporary," I lied, stepping back to let her in. There was nowhere for her to sit except the mattress or a stack of books. She chose to remain standing. "I brought you some risotto from the party," she said, thrusting the container at me. "It's truffle and mushroom. I know it's your favorite. I saw them throwing it away and I had to save some for you." I took the container. It was cold. "Thanks, Cass." "So?" she said, looking around the small space, her eyes lingering on the boxes. "How are you holding up? Financially, I mean. With the funeral costs and everything." It was a weird question to lead with. Usually people asked, "How are you feeling?" Or, "Do you need a hug?" "I'm managing," I said vaguely. "It's tight, but I'll figure it out." "Did Lucas?" She paused, biting her lip in that way she did when she was nervous. "Did he leave anything? I mean, I know you guys were super private, but surely he had a policy. Or a savings account." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Cassie was wearing a new bracelet, a gold chain with a diamond charm. It looked expensive. And Cassie, who worked as a receptionist at a dental office, was always complaining about being broke. A cold prickle of suspicion started at the base of my neck. "Why do you ask?" I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm just worried about you," she said quickly, too quickly. She reached out and squeezed my arm. Her hands were warm. Mine were like ice. "I mean, look at this place, Zoe. If you have money, you need to use it. You need to get out of here. Did he have a secret account? Maybe crypto? Jared mentioned Lucas was into tech." Jared mentioned. The name hung in the air between us like a bad smell. "No," I lied, my face a mask of defeat. "Nothing. He died broke, Cass. I have negative $35 in my bank account. I'm completely destitute." I watched her face. For a microsecond, just a flash, her shoulders relaxed. A tiny smile tugged at the corner of her mouth before she forced it back into a frown of sympathy. "Oh, you poor thing," she cooed. "I need to use the little girl's room," Cassie announced a few minutes later, "and I refuse to use a bucket or whatever you have in here. I'm going to run into the main house. Is that okay?" "Sure," I said. "Use the one by the kitchen. Mom is guarding the good towels. Be right back." She set her purse down on top of the box I used as a table, the box that contained my wedding album, and darted out into the drizzle. I stared at the purse. It was a designer bag, Louis Vuitton, not a knockoff. I knew the stitching. That bag cost $3,000. 2 weeks ago, Cassie couldn't afford to split a pizza. My phone was in my pocket, dead. But hers was sitting right there in the open side pocket of the bag. I shouldn't look. It was a violation of privacy. It was paranoid. It was crazy. But I remembered the pawn shop receipt. I remembered the 18% interest rate on my parents' loan. I remembered the mug shot. I walked over to the purse. Just as I reached for it, the screen lit up. Buzz. A notification banner appeared across the lock screen. Sender, Jared, future Beal. Message. Did you find out if she knows about the account? We need to clear the transfer before Monday. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up the truffle risotto I hadn't even eaten yet. Future Bill, brother-in-law, and the account. They knew, or they suspected. They knew Lucas had money, and they were terrified I would find it before they could siphon it all away from my parents. And Cassie, my best friend, was the spy. I stared at the screen until it went black. We need to clear the transfer. They weren't just stealing my house. They were planning to drain something else. The door creaked open behind me. I jumped back, my heart slamming into my throat. Cassie breezed in, shaking water from her hair. "God, your mom is intense. She made me take my shoes off in the garage." She walked over and grabbed her purse, slinging it over her shoulder. She didn't notice me shaking. She didn't notice the look of absolute devastation on my face. She was too busy checking her phone. I watched her read the text. I watched her type a quick reply. "Well, I should run," she said brightly. "I have a thing, but I'll check on you tomorrow, okay? Hang in there, babe." She hugged me. I stood there, arms limp at my sides, letting the enemy embrace me. I smelled her perfume, Chanel No. 5, another new purchase. "Bye, Cassie," I whispered. "Thanks for the food." As she walked out, I didn't feel sad. The sadness had burned away, leaving something colder and harder in its place. I was alone, truly, completely alone. The bus ride to downtown Seattle took an hour and a half. I sat in the back, wearing my funeral dress because it was the only clean thing I had, trying to make myself as small as possible. I clutched a manila folder containing Lucas's death certificate and our marriage license. I got off at 3rd Avenue and walked 4 blocks to the glass skyscraper where Henderson and Clark had their offices. I didn't look like a client. I looked like a woman who had slept in a shed. My hair was frizzy from the humidity, my shoes were scuffed, and I had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of cold water could fix. The receptionist looked at me with open skepticism. "I have an appointment with Mr. Henderson," I said, trying to project the authority I used to have when I audited Fortune 500 companies. "Zoe Mitchell." "One moment," she said, her voice dripping with doubt. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a leather chair that cost more than my entire wardrobe, across from a man who looked like he carved grandfathers out of oak for a living. Mr. Henderson was Lucas's attorney. I had only met him once when we signed our wills 5 years ago. "Zoe," he said gently, "I am so deeply sorry for your loss. Lucas was a brilliant young man." "Thank you," I said. "I need to know what he left, Mr. Henderson. My family, they say he was in debt. They say I'm broke." Mr. Henderson frowned, adjusting his glasses. "In debt? Lucas?" He opened a thick file on his desk. "Zoe, Lucas was one of the most financially conservative individuals I have ever represented. He didn't believe in debt." He slid a document across the polished mahogany desk. "This is the summary of the Frugal Living Trust. Lucas set it up 3 years ago when his software patent was acquired." I looked at the numbers. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. Total assets. $12,400,000. I stopped breathing. 12 million? I squeaked. And change, Mr. Henderson said. The bulk of it is in low-risk index funds and municipal bonds. He wanted security, Zoe. He wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened to him, you would never have to worry. Tears welled up in my eyes. He had been a millionaire. We'd been driving a 10-year-old car and clipping coupons, and he had been sitting on an empire. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered. He wanted to surprise you, Henderson said softly. On your 10th anniversary, he wanted to buy you a house in Italy. It was in the plan. Italy? I put my head in my hands. Okay, I said, looking up. Okay, I need access. I need to withdraw some funds. Today. Right now. Mr. Henderson's face fell. He pulled the file back slightly. That is going to be a problem. What do you mean a problem? I asked, my voice rising. It's my money. I'm the beneficiary. You are, Henderson agreed. But because of the structure of the trust and the size of the estate, there is a mandatory probate waiting period. The state requires a 30-day hold to allow for any creditor claims. 30 days? I stood up. I don't have 30 days. I don't have 30 minutes. My parents are about to lose their house to a con artist. I'm living in a tool shed. Henderson looked alarmed. A tool shed? I need the money now, I pleaded. Is there no way to expedite it? There is an emergency disbursement clause, Henderson said slowly. But it requires an expedited filing with the probate court. The filing fees for an estate of this size are significant. How much? $5,000, he said. Payable to the court clerk, by certified check. I laughed. It was a dry, hysterical sound. $5,000, I repeated. I have negative $35, Mr. Henderson. I can't even buy a sandwich. The firm cannot front the fees, he said apologetically. It's against the bylaws. I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow, Zoe, but you will need to bring the check. I sank back into the chair. $12 million. It was right there. I could see the number on the page. It was enough to buy the whole neighborhood, enough to crush Miles Polanski like a bug. But I was locked out by a $5,000 paywall. It was the ultimate cosmic joke. I'll get it, I said, my voice hollow. I don't know how, but I'll get it. I walked out of the lawyer's office and into the rain. I had one asset, one thing left. I looked down at my left hand, my engagement ring. It wasn't huge. It wasn't the gaudy rock Brittany was sporting. The one I now knew was probably fake. It was a vintage emerald-cut diamond, flawless, set in platinum. Lucas had picked it out himself. He had spent 3 months' salary on it back when we were just starting out. Don't do it, a voice in my head screamed. It's all you have left of him. If I don't do it, I answered myself, I lose everything else. I walked 6 blocks to a pawn shop, not the one my father used. I couldn't risk him seeing the item. I went to a high-end place near the Pike Place Market. The bell chimed as I walked in. The air smelled of dust and old dreams. The broker was a woman with sharp eyes and a kind face. She looked at my wet dress, my desperate eyes, and then at my hand. Rough day? She asked. Rough year, I said. I pulled the ring off. It left a pale tan line on my finger. My hand felt naked, weightless. I placed it on the velvet counter. I need $5,000, I said, cash. She put a loop to her eye and examined it. It's a beautiful stone, she said. VVS1 clarity, platinum setting, early 1920s, I'd guess. Please, I whispered. I can give you 4, she said. I need 5, I said, leaning against the counter because my knees were shaking. It's for legal fees. To get my inheritance, I will come back for it. I promise. I will pay whatever interest you want. Just please, give me 5. She looked at me. She looked at the ring. She looked at the rain outside. She sighed. 5,000, she said. But you have 30 days. After that, it goes in the case." "Thank you," I choked out. She counted out the bills, 50 $100 bills. I took the stack of money. It felt heavy. It felt like betrayal. I walked out of the shop, clutching the envelope of cash to my chest. I looked at my bare finger. "I'm coming back for you," I promised the empty space. "I'm coming back for everything." I went straight back to Henderson's office. I didn't even stop to eat, even though my stomach was cramping with hunger. I slammed the envelope of cash onto his desk. "File it," I said. Henderson looked at the cash, then at my hand. He saw the missing ring. His expression softened into something resembling respect. "I will have the courier run it over immediately," he said. "The funds should be unlocked within 24 hours. "Good," I said. "Now I need you to set up a corporation for me." "A corporation?" "A shell company," I said. "Generic name. Something that sounds boring and corporate. Phoenix Holdings or Apex Management. Something my family won't recognize." He typed on his keyboard. "Phoenix Holdings LLC is available." "Take it," I said. "I want the $12 million transferred into that corporate account the second it clears." "Zoe," Henderson said, leaning forward, "what are you planning to do?" "I'm going to be an investor," I said coldly. "There is a distressed asset I have my eye on." "A distressed asset?" "My parents' house," I said. "I did a title search. They took out a predatory bridge loan with quick cash capital. They've already defaulted on the first payment. I want you to call Quick Cash." "And say what?" "Tell them you represent a private equity firm interested in purchasing their non-performing mortgage notes. Tell them we'll pay cash for the debt." Henderson raised an eyebrow. "You want to buy the mortgage? You want to become your parents' lender?" "I want to become their landlord," I corrected. "If Quick Cash forecloses, they get evicted and the house goes to auction. Miles, Jared, wins because the money is already gone. My parents end up on the street. And if you own the debt? Then I control the timeline," I said. "I control the eviction, and I control the lease." "It's aggressive," Henderson noted. "It's ruthless." "I learned from the best," I said, thinking of my mother slapping my hand away from the bathroom door. "Do it. Offer them 80 cents on the dollar. They'll take it to get the bad debt off their books." Henderson nodded, picking up his phone. "One more thing," I said, standing up. "I need a copy of the deed, and I need you to hire a private investigator. I have a name, Miles Polanski." "The fugitive?" Henderson asked, pausing. "The fiancé," I said. The smell of rosemary and roasting lamb wafted out of the kitchen vent and into the shed, taunting my empty stomach. I had eaten a granola bar and an apple for lunch. That was it. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Pamela. "We need you in the main house. Server called in sick. Need you to plate the dinner. Wear something presentable. Black." I stared at the screen. I was the widow of the man who had paid off their original mortgage, and now I was their backup waitress. I put on my black funeral dress again. It was the only black thing I owned that fit. When I entered the kitchen, the atmosphere was manic. Brittany was arranging flowers with the focus of a bomb disposal expert. Jared was decanting wine, a vintage bottle that I recognized from Lucas's collection. A 1996 Barolo. He had been saving it for our 10th anniversary. Jared poured the dark red liquid into a crystal decanter, swirling it arrogantly. "Ah, Zoe," he said, not looking up. "Just in time. We have the potential investors from the tech sector coming in 20 minutes. I need you to pass the hors d'oeuvres. Try to look less like a funeral and more like a celebration." "You're drinking Lucas's wine," I said, my voice tight. "It was gathering dust," Jared said smoothly, flashing that shark-like smile. "Wine is meant to be drunk, Zoe, holding on to things. It's a poverty mindset. We're releasing the abundance." "Releasing the abundance," I repeated internally. "You mean stealing my assets?" "Here," Pamela said, shoving a silver tray into my hands. It was heavy, laden with fig and goat cheese tarts. Don't speak unless spoken to. These men are very important. They are the key to the Series A funding. I walked into the dining room as the guests arrived. They weren't tech moguls. I recognized one of them. He was a local car dealership owner who had been sued for fraud last year. The other two looked like they were rented from a casting agency for generic businessmen. I circulated the room, invisible. "The bridge loan is fully secured," I heard Jared saying to Mason near the fireplace. "The capital hit the account this morning. We're just waiting for the International Clearinghouse to approve the transfer to the European entity." "And you're sure about the rate?" Mason asked, his voice trembling slightly. 18% is steep, Jared. If the returns don't come in by the 1st... Mason, Jared soothed, patting my father on the back. "Risk is the price of entry. The returns on the crypto arbitrage are 300%. You'll pay off that loan in 2 weeks and pocket a cool $1 million. Do you want to be a pensioner forever, or do you want to be a tycoon?" My father straightened his spine. Greed washed away his fear. "A tycoon," he whispered. I gripped the silver tray so hard my knuckles turned white. They had already received the loan money, and Jared was moving it to Europe, which meant I had hours, maybe minutes, before it vanished forever. The next morning, I was woken by shouting. It wasn't the happy family shouting of a game night. It was the desperate, panicked shouting of a man watching his life burn down. I crept to the shed door and cracked it open. The sound was coming from the back patio. Mason was pacing back and forth, holding his cell phone to his ear. He looked gray. His hand was shaking so bad the phone was vibrating against his head. "What do you mean, default?" Mason yelled. "The loan originated 48 hours ago. There must be a grace period." He listened for a moment, then paled. "Immediate acceleration clause?" he whispered. But the funds were supposed to... I can't pay $300,000 today. I don't have it." I watched from the shadows. The quick cash loan. Predatory lenders often put in clauses that allowed them to call the full loan due immediately if the collateral, the house, dropped in value or if the borrower's credit score took a hit. Or more likely, they saw Mason transfer the entire principal amount to an offshore account an hour after he got it, triggering an anti-money laundering flag. Jared walked out onto the patio wearing a silk robe and holding a coffee cup. He looked annoyed by the noise. "Dad, calm down," Jared said, yawning. "Who is it?" "The bank," Mason hissed, covering the receiver. "They say the loan is in default because of suspicious activity. They want the full amount back. Today, or they start foreclosure proceedings." Jared laughed. He actually laughed. "Oh, these small-town banks," Jared said, waving his hand dismissively. "It's just a glitch, Mason." "The blockchain transfer to Europe probably triggered a manual review. I'll have my legal team call them. It's a nothing burger." "They said they're sending a process server," Mason squeaked. "Let them come," Jared said, taking a sip of coffee. "By the time they file the paperwork, we'll have made $5 million, buy the bank, and fire that guy. Trust the process, Mason. Trust me." Mason looked at the phone. He looked at Jared. I held my breath. "See him, Dad. See the liar standing right in front of you." Mason lowered the phone. He hung up on the bank. "Okay," Mason breathed. "Okay, you're right. It's just a glitch." I closed the shed door gently. It wasn't a glitch. It was the end. And my father had just hung up on his only chance to fix it. I needed proof of where the money went. Mason mentioned a transfer. I watched the house like a hawk from my shed window. At 10 o'clock, Pamela and Brittany left in the SUV, probably going for manicures before the party. Jared took his sports car and roared out of the driveway, likely going to meet his legal team, a.k.a. a stripper or a drug dealer. Mason was in the garage, aggressively organizing his golf clubs to soothe his nerves. The kitchen was empty. I sprinted across the lawn. The back door was unlocked. Jared had left it open when he went out for a smoke earlier. I slipped inside. The house was quiet. On the kitchen island sat Pamela's iPad. It was her lifeline. She used it for recipes, Facebook, and unfortunately for her, managing the household accounts. I tapped the screen. Enter passcode. I looked at the grease smudges on the glass. I tried her birthday. 1965. Incorrect passcode. I tried the last 4 digits of the house phone. Incorrect passcode. Wait. I remembered something. Last Christmas, Brittany had set up the new iPad for her. Brittany was a narcissist. I typed in Brittany's birthday. 0824. Unlocking. The screen opened to her Pinterest board for luxury living. I minimized it and opened the email app. I searched transfer. There it was. A confirmation from the bank, time-stamped yesterday at 2 p.m., wire transfer sent. Amount $295,000. Recipient Crypto Secure Global LLC. Destination Bank. Cayman National. Crypto Secure, I whispered. That wasn't a European investment firm. That sounded like a classic wash account. I clicked on the forwarded thread. Mason had forwarded the receipt to Jared's email, jared.kingprestigelife.com, with the subject line, done. When do returns start? I tapped on Jared's email address to see the details. The display name was Jared King. But when I clicked View Contact, the underlying metadata showed a different recovery email. milesmtigmail.com. He was sloppy. He was so arrogant he didn't even scrub the metadata from his alias. I took a picture of the screen with my phone. Then I forwarded the email to my work address and immediately deleted the sent email from Pamela's sent folder and the trash folder. I wiped the screen with a dish towel to remove my fingerprints and ran back to the shed. I had the money trail. I was back in the shed, adrenaline making my hands shake, when the door opened without a knock. Brittany stood there. She held a garment bag. "Mom wants you to steam this," she said, tossing the bag onto my damp mattress. "It's my rehearsal dinner dress. The steamer is in the laundry room." "Brittany," I said, standing up, "we need to talk." "I don't have time for your drama, Zoe," she sighed, checking her reflection in her phone camera. "I have to be camera ready in 3 hours." "He's stealing the money," I said, blurting it out. "I saw the transfer. Dad sent $300,000 to the Cayman Islands. It's gone, Britt. The bank is calling the loan." "You're going to lose the house." Brittany froze. She lowered her phone slowly. For a second, I thought I got through to her. I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You went through Dad's email?" she asked, her voice low. "I'm trying to save you." I stepped closer. "Jared isn't who he says he is. His name is Miles. He's a fugitive. I ran a facial recognition search. Look." I reached for my laptop to show her the mugshot. "Stop it!" she screamed. I stopped. "You are so pathetic," Brittany spat, her face twisting into something ugly. "You can't stand it, can you? You can't stand that I'm happy. You can't stand that I'm marrying a rich man who actually takes care of me, unlike Lucas, who left you with nothing." "Lucas left me millions," I wanted to scream. "Lucas was worth 10 of Jared." But I bit my tongue. Not yet. "He's a con artist, Brittany," I said quietly. "Please, just look at the photo." "I don't want to look at your Photoshop lies," she yelled. "Jared told me you'd do this. He told me you were jealous. He said you'd try to sabotage us because you're miserable and alone." She grabbed the garment bag off the mattress. "Steam the dress, Zoe, or don't. I don't care. But if you try to ruin my party tonight, I will make sure Dad cuts you off completely. You'll be sleeping under a bridge instead of in this shed." She stormed out, slamming the thin plywood door so hard the dust fell from the rafters. I stood there in the silence. "Okay," I whispered. "I tried. I really tried. I was done saving them. Now I was just going to acquire them." My phone rang. It was Henderson. "It's done," he said. His voice was professional, clipped. "The funds cleared?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the mattress. "The trust funds cleared an hour ago. Phoenix Holdings is fully capitalized with $6 million in operating cash." "And the mortgage?" We made the offer to Quick Cash at 11 a.m., Henderson said. They were enthusiastic. They accepted 75 cents on the dollar for the non-performing note. They wanted it off their books before the quarter closed. So I own it? As of 10 minutes ago, Phoenix Holdings is the primary lien holder on the property at 424 Maple Drive. You are the bank, Zoe. A cold, hard satisfaction settled in my chest. It felt better than happiness. It felt like power. What do you want to do? Henderson asked. We can initiate foreclosure immediately. We can serve the notice today. I looked at the dress Brittany had thrown at me. I looked at the main house through the window where they were getting ready to celebrate their dynasty. No, I said. Not today. Let them have their party. Zoe, serve the papers tomorrow morning, I said. At 8 a.m. sharp, I want the sheriff to tape the eviction notice to the front door while they're hung over. Understood, Henderson said. And the private investigator? He's en route, I said. I spoke to him. He's bringing the FBI. You're playing a dangerous game, Henderson warned. I'm not playing, Mr. Henderson, I said. I'm working. At 5 o'clock, Pamela knocked on the shed door. She was holding a hanger. On it hung a black polyester dress with a white collar. It looked like something a maid would wear in a bad movie. Here, she said, thrusting it at me. The catering staff needs to match. Jared insists on uniformity for the brand aesthetic. I took the dress. The fabric was rough and smelled of plastic. You want me to wear a maid's uniform, I said flatly, to my sister's engagement party. It's not a maid's uniform, Pamela said, adjusting her pearl earring. It's service chic. And honestly, Zoe, it's a favor. We're paying you $50 for the night. You need the money. $50, I repeated. And you can take home the leftovers, she added benevolently. So you won't have to worry about groceries next week. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me. I looked for any sign of shame, any flicker of maternal instinct. There was nothing, just vanity and a terrifying delusion. Okay, I said. I'll wear it. Good, she said, turning to leave. Be at the coat check by 5:30. And smile, Zoe. It confuses people when you frown. I closed the door. I stripped off my funeral dress. I put on the scratchy polyester uniform. It was tight in the arms and loose in the waist. I looked ridiculous. But underneath the uniform, taped to my thigh with medical tape, was a USB drive containing the email screenshots, the bank transfer receipts, and the audio recording of Jared admitting the money was gone. I put my hair in a tight bun. I put on my comfortable shoes. I looked in the cracked mirror propped up against the tool bench. Service chic, I whispered to my reflection. I wasn't the maid. I was the executioner, and I was dressed for work. The coat check was a folding table shoved into a narrow hallway near the restrooms. The air smelled of lavender air freshener and sewage. My job was to take the coats of people who used to be my neighbors, people who had been at my wedding, people who looked right through me like I was a piece of furniture. Ticket, please, I said for the 50th time, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plaster. It was Cassie. She looked stunning in a red dress that I knew she bought with the referral fee Jared had probably given her. Oh, hey, Z, she said, breezy and light. She tossed her coat at me without making eye contact. Make sure you hang it on a wooden hanger, okay? The wire ones leave bumps in the shoulders. Wooden hanger, I repeated. Got it. Thanks, babe. You're a lifesaver. She breezed past me toward the ballroom where the bass of a DJ set was already thumping. I watched her go. I wanted to scream. Instead, I searched her pockets. Nothing but a lipstick and a breath mint. Smart. 10 minutes later, Jared appeared. He looked flushed, sweaty. The stress of success was apparently making him overheat. Zoe, he snapped, peeling off his tuxedo jacket. Take this. It's stifling in there, and don't wrinkle it. It's Italian silk. He threw the jacket on the table. It slid across the plastic surface and hit my hand. Enjoying the party? He asked, flashing that shark smile. I see you're keeping busy. It suits you. Service work keeps the ego in check. "I'm having a blast, Jared," I said flatly. He winked and walked away, adjusting his cufflinks. I waited until he turned the corner. Then I grabbed the jacket. It was heavy. I patted the pockets, a pack of cigarettes, a lighter, and something rigid in the inside breast pocket. I pulled it out. It was a passport. Blue. United States. I opened it. The photo was him. The name was Miles Polanski. But inside the passport was something else. A folded piece of paper. A plane ticket. Passenger, Miles Polanski. Flight, Delta 199. Departing, SeaTac International. Destination, Mexico City. Time, 11:30 p.m. tonight. I looked at my cheap wristwatch. It was 8:15. He wasn't waiting for Monday. He wasn't waiting for the European transfer. He was leaving tonight. He was going to sign the papers, take the last of the cash, and vanish before the confetti hit the floor. "Not if I can help it," I whispered. I needed access to the AV booth. The booth was a raised platform at the back of the ballroom. I could see the technician, a bored-looking kid in a hoodie, scrolling on his phone while a preset playlist ran. I grabbed a tray of champagne flutes from a passing waiter who looked as miserable as I felt. "I'll take these," I said. "VIP request." I walked up the stairs to the booth. The music was louder here, vibrating in my chest. "Hey!" I shouted over the bass. "Complimentary drink for the crew." The kid looked up, surprised. "For real? Sweet." He took a glass. He downed it in one gulp. "Hey, do you know where the restroom is?" he asked. "I've been holding it for 2 hours." "Down the hall, past the coat check," I said. "I can watch the board for a sec. Just don't tell the manager." "You're a legend," he said, hopping off his stool. "Don't touch the faders." As soon as he was gone, I dropped the tray. Glass shattered, but the music covered the sound. I pulled my laptop out of my oversized tote bag, which I had stashed under the table earlier. I looked at the mess of cables. HDMI, XLR, USB-C. "Come on, Lucas," I muttered. "Guide my hand." I found the main feed cable, the one labeled Projector Main. It was plugged into a sleek MacBook Pro sitting open on the desk. I unplugged it from the MacBook. I plugged it into my laptop. My screen flickered. External display detected. I opened the file I had prepared. Project Truth MP4. I checked the audio output. Connected. I checked the volume. Maxed out. The kid would be back in 2 minutes. I didn't have time to hide. I just sat down on his stool, smoothed my polyester skirt, and waited. The music faded. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Jared walked out to thunderous applause. My parents were standing on either side of him, looking like royalty. Brittany was crying, holding a bouquet of roses. "Thank you," Jared shouted into the microphone. "Thank you all. Tonight is not just about a brand, it is about family." He put his arm around Mason. "This man," Jared said, his voice cracking with fake emotion. "He believed in me when no one else did. He put his legacy on the line. And tonight, we seal that bond." A table was wheeled out. On it sat a leather portfolio, the partnership agreement. "Mason," Jared said, "will you do us the honor? Sign the papers, and let's make history." Mason took the gold pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at the crowd. He looked at the papers. He looked like a man about to jump off a cliff, hoping he could fly. Mason started. "I'm just so proud." He leaned over the table. "Now," I whispered, hitting the spacebar on my laptop. The giant screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the Prestige Lifestyle logo, went black. A loud static noise ripped through the speakers, making everyone cover their ears. Then a voice boomed out. "Did you find out if she knows about the account? We need to clear the transfer before Monday." It was Jared's voice, or rather Miles's voice, reading the text message I had captured. The crowd gasped. Mason froze, the pen hovering inches from the paper. On the screen, the text message exchange appeared, blown up to 10 feet tall. Cassie. She has no idea. She thinks she's broke. I saw Cassie in the front row drop her champagne glass. It shattered on the floor. Then the image changed. It was the bank transfer receipt. Wire transfer, $295,000. Recipient, Crypto Secure Global. Owner, Miles Polanski. "What is this?" Mason stammered, looking up at the screen. "What?" Then the final image. The mugshot. Miles Polanski, fugitive. The room went silent. Dead silent. I stood up in the booth. I grabbed the technician's microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice echoing through the hall, "the man on stage is not Jared King. His name is Miles Polanski. He is a wanted fugitive, and he is currently wearing a passport in his jacket pocket with a ticket to Mexico departing in 3 hours." Jared looked up at the booth. He saw me. His face went pale, then red. The mask fell off. The charm evaporated, leaving only the rat underneath. "Cut the feed!" he screamed, pointing at me. "She's lying!" "It's a deep fake. It's AI." "It's not AI, Miles," I said calmly. "It's an audit." Panic erupted. The investors, the paid actors, started murmuring. The real guests started pulling out their phones. Jared looked at Mason. Mason was staring at the screen, looking at the money transfer receipt. The realization washed over him like a tidal wave. The money was gone. "You," Mason whispered, "you stole it." "It's business, Mason," Jared shouted, backing away. "You wouldn't understand." He turned and jumped off the stage. "Move!" he yelled, shoving a waiter aside. "Out of my way!" He sprinted toward the side exit, but the doors burst open before he could reach them. "FBI! Nobody move!" 4 agents in windbreakers stormed in, guns drawn. Jared skidded to a halt. He looked left, blocked. He looked right, blocked. He looked at me. I was standing at the top of the stairs by the booth. He ran toward the coat check hallway, the only unguarded exit. I didn't think. I just moved. I ran down the stairs. I reached the hallway just as he rounded the corner. He was fast, but I was angry. I grabbed the heavy metal rack of coats, the one weighed down by 100 wool jackets. I shoved it into his path. Crash! Jared slammed into the rack. He went down in a tangle of fur and denim. He tried to scramble up, but an agent was on him in seconds. "Miles Polanski," the agent shouted. "You are under arrest." They cuffed him face down on the carpet. I walked over. I stood over him. He looked up at me, his nose bleeding, his eyes wild. "You little witch," he spat. "You ruined everything." "No, Miles," I said, smoothing my polyester skirt. "I just balanced the books." The party emptied out fast. Nothing clears a room like federal agents. An hour later, it was just me, my family, and the cleaning crew sweeping up the broken glass. My parents were sitting on the edge of the stage. Mason had his head in his hands. Pamela was staring into space, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. Brittany was sobbing quietly, ripping the petals off her bouquet. I walked up to them. "The FBI took his phone," I said. "They'll find the crypto wallet, but the money, it's likely gone, Dad. He probably spent it on the lawyers for his last case." Mason looked up. He looked old. "The house," he whispered. "The bank. They'll take the house. We're homeless, Zoe. We have nothing." "You don't have nothing," I said. I reached into my tote bag. I pulled out a blue folder. "I bought the debt," I said. They stared at me. "What?" Pamela asked. "Phoenix Holdings," I said. "That's me. I bought your mortgage note this morning. I am the bank." Mason stood up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Oh, thank God, thank God. Zoe, you saved us. You can just forgive it, right? Write it off? We're family." I looked at him. I looked at the man who pawned my husband's watch. I looked at the woman who made me sleep in a shed. I looked at the sister who called me a jealous loser. "I'm not writing it off," I said. The hope vanished. "I'm converting it," I said, "to a rental agreement." I pulled out 3 stapled documents. Residential lease, I read. Tenant, Mason and Pamela Miller, monthly rent $3,500, due on the 1st. Rent? Pamela shrieked. You're charging us rent in our own house. My house, I corrected, legally, and there are conditions. I handed a separate paper to Brittany. Condition 1, no subletting, I said. Condition 2, the garden suite is now the primary residence for the tenants. I will be moving back into the main house. The shed? Brittany gasped. You want us to live in the shed? It's cottagecore, I said, using Jared's words. You'll love it. It's very grounding. And condition 3, I said, looking at all of them. Employment. You all need jobs, real jobs, to pay the rent. I'm retired, Mason shouted. Not anymore, I said. I spoke to the manager at the burger place down the street. They're hiring a fry cook, start Monday. I dropped the lease on the table. Sign it, I said, or get out. You have until midnight. I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for their answer. I knew they would sign. They had nowhere else to go. As I walked out into the cool night air, I took a deep breath. The rain had stopped. The stars were out. I pulled my phone out. I dialed Henderson. It's done, I said. They signed. And the watch? Henderson asked. I'm going to the pawn shop tomorrow, I said. I'm buying it back. And then I'm going to Italy. 3 months later, I am writing this from a balcony in Positano. The view is ridiculous. Blue water, lemon trees, the works. I finally drank that bottle of wine. Well, a replacement bottle I bought with the dividends from my trust. Things back home are stable. My parents signed the lease. They live in the shed now. I hired a contractor to insulate it and add a bathroom because I'm not a monster, but it's still small. Mason works 20 hours a week at the burger joint. He hates it, but he's lost 10 pounds and his cholesterol is down. Pamela has started selling her art on Etsy. It doesn't sell, so she mostly just knits scarves for the neighbors. Brittany actually surprised me. She got a job at the mall, retail. She sends me a check for her share of the rent every month. It's usually late, but it clears. We don't talk much, but last week she sent me a text that just said, I'm sorry. I haven't replied yet. I'm not ready. As for Miles, he's in federal custody awaiting trial. It turns out I wasn't the only one he scammed. The list of victims is long. And Cassie? I fired her as my friend. I also sent the screenshots of her texts to her fiancé. I heard the wedding is off. I still miss Lucas every single day. I wear his watch on my wrist. It's a little big, but I like the weight of it. It reminds me that I'm strong enough to carry the time alone. I realized something through all of this. My family told me I was useless. They told me I was weak. But when the world fell apart, I was the only one with a plan. They called me a data clerk. I prefer the title owner. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.